So, Elizabeth, tell me, when was the first time you realised there was such a thing as art?
Um, I don't have a memory of a first time. I think I always knew. It was always part of my life in the sense in a creative way, as opposed to art with a capital A.
Mm. So in your mind, what's capital A art and what's the rest of the creative stuff?
Well, probably art as or artist as a profession, or art as a more sort of industry almost, as opposed to creativity, which is just part of life.
Mm. And so, when did you see yourself as an artist, or when did you first see yourself as an artist?
I don't know that I ever saw myself as an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a kid I was drawing the entire time,
yeah.
and music as well, playing the piano.
Yeah. And what was your interest in what were you drawing, that type of thing?
Well, my very earliest memories of drawing, I think I must have done pages and pages, lots of pages of houses, and I could still draw the same house that I used to draw, which curiously was nothing like an English house growing up in England. Was more of a sort of symmetrical Georgian style, which houses that I've since lived in, but in France, not then, so that's quite funny. And I do remember doing lots of drawings of a naked, it's a strange thing, I don't know what my parents thought, but a naked woman pushing a baby in a pram.
Well, there you go. So let's just go back to the houses.
Yeah.
Were you fascinated by architecture, or is it something else about the space that a house represents?
I don't have any memories. It was just something I drew. It wasn't anything I...
So some people are good at drawing cars, and you're good at drawing houses.
I did houses, and it would start with a house that would just get more and more intricate, more details, with a garden around it, and a fence, and smoke coming out of the chimney. No, the house never got bigger, just the details got. Right. It just got more detailed.
Yeah. And so when did you start developing your practice as an artist?
Well, I did quite a lot of art at school, and I did art O-level, and which was really nice.
So
actually.
When you do O-levels, you're sort of 16, 17?
Yeah, 16. Yeah, and I was in a grammar school, and so it was quite academic, and art wasn't really encouraged, but there was a lovely big art room, and I was the only one doing it, and so I got left by myself to do it by myself. So I could just spend hours in this massive big art room doing stuff. I didn't have lessons. I just could go along, and the teacher would come along now and then and sort of give me a few hints.
And so you sort of a combination of houses and naked ladies. Did that?
No. That was when I was very little.
Right.
Oh no, I wasn't. I'd moved beyond houses and naked ladies pushing prams. So no, then it was about drawing. Still life. I did a lot of still life at school. But then after school, so after 16, I hardly did anything for years and years. Not in drawing or painting. And my next memory of painting is when, in my early 20s, when I first went to France, doing some watercolour. And funnily enough, just a few months ago, I got a message on Messenger with a photo of one of those paintings that I'd done.
Is that right?
Yes, and it was my ex-husband, who I hadn't had. I was married very briefly in my early 20s in France, and I'd done this. It was wine glasses.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't realise who it was or where it had come from, but I recognised it. And he'd kept it all these years and had put it up in his restaurant.
Well, there you go.
So I thought that was rather sweet.
So when did you sort of feel like you seriously re-engaged with doing art?
Not until my children were old enough for me to have a breathing space when they were at school.
And what did you start launching into then?
Painting, oil painting.
I'd
wanted to do oil painting. I mean, I'd done lots of other creative, arty things while I had my family and my children, but not actual painting.
And so what was the attraction of the oil paint? Was it tactility or...?
Oh, it's so luscious.
Yeah.
And you can just sort of spread it like butter and mix it on the canvas, and it's just really nice.
So in terms of, are you sort of mainly palette knife, or do you use brushes?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Could you give us a potted summary of your technique that you've emerged to now?
I like to do alla prima, so in the wet. So I don't often let it dry, and sometimes I do, or I might just do the final bit when it's dried. But I like to layer up lots and lots of colour. So if I'm trying to produce a colour, and I'll have the colours that I mix. So I only really use primary colours, and I make all my colours up. But rather than mixing it completely,
and what's your reason for working from that rather than getting 100 tubes of different shades of blue?
I don't know. It's more fun making your own colour.
Right, yeah, fair enough. That's very valid.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's a discovery as well. Because sometimes it's a little bit of an accident. It's not, or just it's a way of learning about colour a lot as well, and I have quite a limited palette sometimes, but end up with a lot of colour on the canvas. So I like to, instead of mixing it all on the palette, I like to mix it on the canvas, or put it on the canvas in a way that from afar it's blended, but up close you can see what the colour's made of. You know what I mean? All the other colours that make up that colour. Yeah.
So tell us about your subject material that you're working with.
Well, I'm really into my nudes at the moment, which I find, I like. It's not so much about the form, so it's mostly female nudes. But
what attracts you to do nudes?
Well, it just seems more personal, I think, at the moment for me. Which I like, but nudes just kind of also it's challenging for me, so that's probably a big part.
When we talked about your work with nudes before, you talked about a sense of rightness. Was that the word you used?
Oh, as in I have to get the foundations right. I have to get the drawing right.
So can you just explain a little bit more about that idea, your idea of getting the foundation right?
Well, that's probably why nudes are more challenging, because if a seascape or a landscape, if the branch isn't quite how it should be, or the waves over there instead of over there, it doesn't matter. You don't have to respect any particular proportions or anything. But with a human body, all humans are experts, and however loose and abstract you want it to be at the end, if you haven't got the right drawing as a foundation, it just doesn't work. Because what I'm aiming for is that more of a feeling about the painting, which will come through in colour. It's not so much the position, and you won't notice, you shouldn't be able to notice that it's a body. You only notice it really when there's something a bit off. So it should be, it's the underlying, it's the foundation, and it's not, but if it's wrong, if it's incorrect, or that the limb doesn't quite join up, or the wrong angle, it detracts from what I'm trying to portray, I think.
And is it one of those things like sometimes people talk about if you get very close to what the human form is, but it's not quite right, that slight miss can become very, very uncanny and very disturbing.
Yes.
Because it's not quite there.
It's not Picasso either. I mean, that's something, obviously it's not supposed to be correct, but what I'm trying to do is convey a mood and a feeling, and it's a support. The body as a shape is a support more than anything else, but because it's human, it talks to the viewer more, I think, because we're quite right. But there's quite an interesting thing I'm playing with at the moment, is doing some female nudes who don't have perfect bodies. In this, when I say perfect, I mean as in what is portrayed in print, so-called perfect, which of course isn't perfect, but that's our eye. We're sort of taught that that's the ideal, and so I am actually exploring. I've just done one of a woman with quite a petite top and quite short legs, and actually sort of out of proportion relative to that ideal body, or the models with the sort of the leggy models, and that's, so that can be jarring in a way, because I think we're so used to seeing these perfect bodies and seeing an imperfect, and it's a relative term, because of course they're perfect. They're all different. Even just myself as a woman, seeing that there's a reaction between this not non-conventional, for want of a better description, not a perfect body, so a little bit too wide, a little bit short in the leg, or something like that. But it's jarring in a different way. A word that just came into my mind is intimacy.
Right.
Because I think...
Well, it's something that you could be intimate with, or an intimate awareness of.
I think it's very easy to be... So if we take this example of the perfect female body as portrayed in... Somehow, if the body is perfect, they seem less naked. And when it's a woman with a normal body, she seems more naked and exposed. And that, so there's a feeling of intimacy, like you sort of look through a keyhole, as opposed to some gorgeous figure, sort of professional model, or... It's
that sort of perfection is carrying layers and layers of conditioning and artifice that's been done by the
and there's a real
industry.
sort of detachment from it. It doesn't pull you in the same way, whereas if it's an imperfect body, you sort of feel slightly as if you shouldn't be looking at it almost, which is bizarre, and I've discovered this as I'm painting these kinds of bodies. But I think it's quite an interesting thing that comes up. And all that conditioning, and we're so used to seeing naked women everywhere to sell everything.
So when you've got this insight, you're presenting that reality or that intimacy and a rightness in the figure that you're doing on the canvas. What are you doing with the paint when you're doing that?
Well, the paint then is so colour is like my language. So you can have a story and the language you use portrays it in a completely different way, but it's still the same story. So it's a little bit like that. So for me, the colours and the way I use colour creates the mood and the emotion, and then the drawing underneath is just the support, really. When I'm sort of flirting with the idea of doing the same pose but in lots of different colours and just to create different moods. And I love the way with colour really does create mood.
And given that you're highly intuitive and you feel your way into your art and you don't want to be too analytical, despite all of that, have you got a sense of what you're going to be doing?
I do have it's not precise in my mind, and so they're just sort of little phrases that come, or insights, if you like. But it's something to do with so intimacy was one, vulnerability and exposure, and the idea that something or someone is exposed and vulnerable. It's where the exposed becomes the exposer. So because the response of other humans to that is really telling.
Yes.
Actually, it says more about the ones that are looking and how they respond to it, whether they want to protect and nurture, or whether they're just neutral or couldn't care less, or there are those that will want to profit from that vulnerability and take advantage of it. So sort of that's sort of playing in my mind as I do these nudes and see my own response to them, and in my own life as well, obviously. But there's nothing more exposed than being naked, is there?
So in that process, what do you see as your role as the artist? You're I can't remember what the phrase was. It was a great one. It was something about the exposed becomes the exposer.
Yes, that's it.
And what's your role as the artist there?
Well, I don't know. I suppose I do expose. I just want to tell a story, and like all art, really, then it's up to the observer, isn't it? They have their own unique response to that.
Because there's some artists would or do take that role of the artist works as the exposer, but it becomes gratuitous or it becomes exploitative.
I want to do just sort of gently. And I had to write up for the Open Studios, and I think I put something like that. I just want to sort of gently peel back the layers and expose, nothing too... Yeah, but that's just maybe because that's how I respond to exposed or vulnerability. But, no, not gratuitous. No, it has to be a little bit more subtle than that, I think. But I try not to think too much about... I don't have a particular message. I'll paint something that touches me, and then everybody has... I think that's the whole point of the exposed becomes the exposer is because you don't know how others are going to respond to it, and it reveals a lot in people, doesn't it? How they reveal things about themselves and the way they respond to what's.
And I guess that then the question also becomes is, you know, do you set up the process where that person becomes conscious of how they are responding, or do you just let them wander into the gallery and go, yeah, whatever?
I don't know that you can actually do that, or I wouldn't know how to do that to, you know, make somebody conscious of it. Apart from that, just that one phrase might make people think the exposed becomes the exposer if they, some people don't really. Everyone's different when you're faced with a situation. Some people are more aware of their response and are quite open and happy with it, even if it's not particularly nice. Where others hide it. So that's not my business. That's not my. That's their business. Yeah. My business is just to sort of tell the story, really, and see.
So, can we talk briefly about you as an artist in Margaret River?
Yeah.
So, what does Margaret River do anything for you as an artist, or is it just you happen to be here and you are an artist who's doing their art?
Really, when I first came here, what was really nice was the fact that there were so many other artists here, and that was a nice thing for me, because I'd lived in pretty much all my life. My art had always been a very sort of solitary thing, and not mixed with. You know, I didn't grow up in a family where there were artists, and then I didn't marry into a family where there were artists. In fact, if anything, the French family I was in that was sort of, you know, it was still very much the myth of the starving artist and sort of marginal, you know, the sort of over there. It was sort of very bourgeois
the
family.
unwashed Bohemians.
Yeah. So it was all a bit like that. So I suppose it feels a bit more mainstream here in a sense. That because I can just get on with. I don't have to explain anything or justify anything. I can just get on and do it. And then it's sort of there are things in place that I can fit into, which is nice.
So that's the human and social context. How about the natural context?
Well, the natural world here is what really pulled me in, got under my skin. So the seascapes. Yeah. I've been doing seascapes for a while, and I started doing them when I arrived in Margaret River, because the ocean here is something else, and it's something. It's quite. It's something that really moves me. I'm scared of water. I can't really swim, and it's something that I find the ocean here. Just standing on the beach there and feeling the vibration of those thundering waves through my body, and it's truly awesome in the proper sense of the word. And that's something I'd like to portray in the painting as well. And that, but not the perfect surf wave, but sort of froth and maybe it's emotion again. Maybe that's somehow there's a link between nudes and seascapes for me, and it's nice for me to go from one to the other. Sometimes if I'm getting a bit stuck on nudes, and I'll go off and do some seascapes, and it helps to free me up in a way. But yeah.
So in both of those, you seem to be drilling down underneath to something.
Yeah, I suppose I'm trying to portray how it moves me, because I'm only ever really going to paint something that moves me in some way. That it's not even a. I mean, if I thought about it, there might be an intellectual meaning, but it's really a sort of a visceral thing, you know, so a physical, sensory thing that moves me and that I want to portray in the painting.
Good. Well, thanks for telling us the stories.
Well, you're welcome.